So is the fall a part of sacrifice? And then, are we glorifying sacrifice? So there's two questions. One, is the fall a part of sacrificing? Because you have to sacrifice your old idea, right? And then you can stretch that sacrifice out to whatever. People sacrifice things all the time. I mean, Christianity is based on a concept of sacrifice, and I think something brilliant you've always talked about. People try to live their life through subtraction. Like, how many things can I eliminate? I'll eliminate meat. I'll eliminate alcohol. I'll eliminate sex. I'll eliminate bad stuff. So you live in your life through subtractions, right? Versus what can I do for addition? Like, I can put in healthy stuff. I can have a healthy lifestyle. I can, it's harder to figure out what to add, but it's easy to say, I just won't do all these bad things, right?
That's amazing that you brought that point, because that sounds like a fall. Well, the subtraction is a fall.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I'm asking, is there glory in sacrifice?
Well, because we know that that's important, is what I'm saying. We know that the fall, that's why we're looking at waterfalls and we're saying stars are falling, that means something. And, I'm falling, so we're looking at the fall and we know that there's information there. We know that there's something there. And so that's what I would call subtraction. Like, because it's moving you toward a place of chaos, like the structure by which you understand the world is being distorted, as you said. Okay. Or modified, and that puts you in a chaotic place. And so you know that on some deep level that's important. And so you start taking all these things away so that you can be more chaotic, right? You start taking away, you start saying, well, I won't do this, I won't do that, I won't do whatever. Which is, you're trying to impose another structure onto yourself. So human beings are just so sophisticated.
Right. But then when the ascent,
the irony is that you don't know anything. You know what I mean? You're a human being and you're very ignorant. But you know things that you don't even know that you know. Like, people don't know things about themselves, kind of.
Well, I don't know if I want to agree to that, but I hear what you're saying. It's a process of awareness, right? But yes. I think what we're saying is, so there's a sacrifice, which is the part of the descent, but at some point, then you start to add things, which is the ascent.
But it sounded like you were saying that there was something negative about sacrifice. I took that implication from you.
Well, so it's both, right? So there's glory in sacrifice because you're kind of releasing some things and you're falling, right? But then at some point, you got to ascend, right? You can't just keep descending. I mean, even with a seed and it dies and it goes into the ground, then there's a transformation. And at some point, there's a switch where it now grows into the plant and it now creates more seeds as it grows, right? It creates a tree that blossoms that has now 1 million seeds. So one seed becomes 1 million, right? See, that's like the story of the mustard seed. It wasn't just that the one little seed. The one little seed, when it dies into the earth, it produces a whole tree, which now has millions of seeds, right? So every seed is like a lot of potential. But how do we recognize the potential? So yes, there has to be the fall, the descent, but at some point, right, there is the ascent. I mean, that's.
Well, you're making a lot of sense, because I'm saying that the check mark is correct, and we know on a deep psychological level that that's correct. That's why we check it off at school and whatever else, and we use that symbol. And we don't know what it means, but if you look at it, you can see that that's what it represents. So that process is a correct process. That doesn't presuppose that the opposite can't happen, where you just continuously fall. I mean, because there is an X, right? I mean, what would the X represent? So the X, we know, represents wrong, right? Or incorrect.
Sure.
And what are those two things doing? They're sort of two lines looping,
sort of crossing each other,
intersecting each other.
And they're going down, 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 right?
Sure. We know that that's incorrect.
But a part of the X is a check mark within it, so you can at any point switch and go back up.
Which would be, I mean, who come up with this symbol? I don't know, but I mean, that sounds like yin and the yang to me. That's why the black snake has white eyes and the white snake has black eyes. You know what I mean? Because you can interchange between those two things at any moment. They're attached to each other. It's sort of the alpha and omega of, the substrate of reality, just built into a symbol.
Sure.
But I think that type of awareness about what correct is, and that, an ideal, like someone like Christ showing you what the ideal could be, once you're falling, you know that there's the possibility for you to ascend if you have that awareness. I mean, obviously, there's also the possibility for you to continuously go down toward non-existence. I mean, that's obviously a possibility. So, but I think it's all it will be determined on what your awareness of, because there's still something for you to do, and I hate to say do, based on our last conversation, because maybe it's something about for you to be, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's not a complete representation, and we know that it's a representation of what's correct, but we know that you're the thing that either makes that happen, or you're the thing that turns into an X, where you're continuously going downward.
Sure. So I have a belief, see if I can capture this, that it's awareness that creates a foundation. So in our minds, we predict that there's no end to the fall. That's why it's so scary. We can't see on the other side of it. It just looks like a fall. But when we bring our awareness to it, to whatever it is, that awareness creates a platform for ascension. And so it is now falling by releasing all the things that I think are the fears of life. So like one of the main things I worked on, I've been traveling too, and I went to a class on healing trauma, healing emotional trauma through art, right? And so I was trying to get in touch with how to heal something that felt stuck, not only in my psyche, in my memory, but physically, like it was showing up physically different places in my body. And what made me sort of think that I need to do it is I was having like chest pains, like I'm too young to have chest pains. Like, okay, so there must be something in my heart. So when I went to the class, what I discovered there that I needed to ascend, like to express the fear, it was the fear of non-existence at its core. Sure. I mean, there were other top layer fears of fear of not being loved, not being accepted, not being blah, 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 blah. But when I layered down to see what's the core fear, it was the fear of non-existence. Like I would not exist anymore, right? So I had to experience what does it feel like to think that I could die, like for real, like I could like have non-existence. Like most people won't even look at that and like, oh, I'm not afraid to die. But, if we look at our action, people are afraid to die, which is why they're trying to diet and exercise and, beauty stuff and whatever. They're trying to continue their life as best as they can and extend their life as long as they can. Why? Because underneath there's a fear of non-existence, right?
It's so interesting because during our previous conversation, I was kind of saying, yeah, I could see why that would be the top of the hierarchy. And you were like, well, you were kind of saying, well, I don't actually believe that I would not exist anymore. Like that's not even in my belief system. So it's very interesting now that you're saying.
Well, because I had a chance to look at it, not just intellectually, but emotionally feel what it would be like to have non-existence. And I realized that I'm very attached to myself. Like I'm very attached to this jewel that I've created or that I think I am, that I look a certain way, I act a certain way, I have a personality. I think I'm great, right? So I'm attached to it. So now to think of, okay, this great person that I've been super attached to could be gone. I'm like,
it seems to fit, but there's just one issue that I was having when I was the same conversation that I'm referring to, where I was saying I'm okay with putting that on the top of my hierarchy. What happened with me is it seemed incomplete. It seemed something was missing because non-existence doesn't hurt. So from sort of the human body, the lymphatic system, and all these biological systems are trying to keep you away from pain, so to speak, or they use pain as information of don't do that again. Because I believe that's what memory is for. Memory isn't for like a video or replay of the past. It's actually so that you can contextualize the past so that whatever hurts you and whatever, you don't do that anymore so that you can survive in the world. It's always sort of and I always take sort of an evolutionary biology point of
okay, but it's back to existence at its core.
What can you do? But I was saying non-existence doesn't hurt. So let's say you're going to die. You're just gone. Now, the people who are here in the material world, and they'll miss you and they'll suffer. So I was really saying that maybe fear of non-existence can be boiled down to loss. because you were talking about you don't want the jewel that you come to appreciate, whatever, not to exist anymore. Because to me, that's an expression of loss. And so that's what people are really trying to avoid. Like, let's say you have a loved one who's not with us anymore. They're not suffering. You know what I mean? They're not in pain.
That's your
They're
belief.
okay, in existentially speaking. They're okay. But
That's
you
your
are the
belief.
one.
That's your belief, right? You believe that they're okay, right? The person has different beliefs about the afterlife, right? We've taught different things. People have different beliefs. So you're okay with saying there's no consequence to non-existence, so who cares? That's what you're saying. But there's some people, because that's what you believe, but there's some people who have been taught and believe that there is a consequence to the afterlife, that you can either go to suffering or hell, or heaven or God, or wait until one of these two things happen, right? Some people just don't believe in non-existence as its final thing, right? They do think that there is a consequence after, and that's cause a part of the fear, because if they believe that they do something bad and they're going to go to suffering after they die, of course they're not going to want to die, because they don't want to be punished forever after, especially if they think they're bad or if they've done bad things. Then in their mind, they're going toward a bad place. So of course they're going to resist that. My attachment to myself is not necessarily based on the fear of punishment or the glory of heaven. I just happen to be attached to the self because I've been with it for a long time. But I realize that I am more than even this physical attachment, physical body, but I've grown attached to it.
Well, couldn't that all of what you said still be contextualized as loss? Because let's say even if you have a belief system that your loved one is gone to an afterlife somewhere, that's still you contextualizing, a belief about if you're losing them or if they're suffering or whatever it is. It's still about you per se. Because there's no human who's ever been dead and come back to say, well, whatever. So there's no evidence for anything.
Some have, though.
Who are dead?
Yeah.
Who?
There are people who have stories of dying and coming back. I mean, I know
their heart stopped beating, or they're dead.
Yeah, they were considered dead. Their heart stopped beating. They
Right, that's not dead.
Saw light, whatever.
I mean, I'm just saying, when the people come and put the probes on you and shock you, I mean, do you consider that? I'm talking about a person who's like zombies or whatever.
I understand, but I'm saying, obviously we're getting a little bit off key, but there's people who've been buried in the morgue, and they weren't dead.
Rule.
Right? They had no heartbeat or no brain waves, and then they woke up days later, like they were in the morgue or they were in a well, right? But that's beside the point. But I know the point you're trying to make is that you don't know if there is an afterlife, right? And most people don't know, but there are belief systems around it. People believe that there is or there isn't, or there are various forms of it, right?
Sure.
And so you're saying that loss is one of those things that people have to deal with. Yes, I completely agree with you. Loss for your loved ones and also loss for yourself. That's what I'm trying to say. You're trying to say they're concerned about their loved ones suffering or non-suffering. That same belief system they're applying to themselves, which creates the fear or the resistance. So it's twofold. Someone that's close to you that's seem like they're going to have loss. You feel sad about that or fear about that. But then at the same time, people have attachment to their own existence that seems like sand sometimes, like such a short life, which is why we cry more for children or babies. And if someone lived, 80, it's like, oh, they lived a good life.
No, I got you. I mean, I think maybe we're saying the same thing. Because, I mean, from what you're saying, I agree with everything you're saying. And I feel like that's maybe what I'm saying, but I'm just not articulating it that way. I'm saying non-existence itself, whether you're moving toward it or you have someone you love that's non-existent anymore, they're not, what I mean? There's no evidence or anything that there's anything going on with them. They're just gone, right? And so the whole context is the person viewing it, the one who's still in the material world. And I'm saying, you're saying people are scared of moving toward non-existence, but I'm thinking that fear of non-existence is just the loss. They're perceptualizing loss, whether it be the loss of themselves, when they see others around them that they feel they've lost, or you know what I mean? So there's still a loss concept.
Sure.
And that hurts.
Sure.
That's very, very painful.
Sure.
Because the people who are not existing, they're not in pain, so to speak. You are.
Sure. And I mean, like you said, the concept of loss is a core causal emotion. Loss, right? Like dealing with loss, because loss is just a perception of something. It's not really loss, right? Loss is just a context of something was a certain way and now it's different. So it's loss and it feels badly, for example, right? Because some loss is good loss. Like people like to lose weight all the time. Like, oh, great, I lost weight. They like that kind of loss, right? But certain things that we're attached to, loss feels like suffering. And if we're really attached to it, then the loss can be unbearable, right? Which is why there's certain loss that's just so horrible. We're super attached to it. Like we want things to be a certain way and it's not. It changes, and that's considered loss.
Yes. So I'm just saying I think that's the core of it versus non-existence. I think that was what I was trying to say. But from what you're describing, it sounds like you're kind of saying the same thing. People contextualize it as non-existence, fear of non-existence, but it's fear of loss, and you replay that loss out in your life all the time. That's what you're afraid of. You're afraid of to have a loss so great that it's unbearable.
And so
that's to bring you down. I mean, that literally will be the end of you if you allow it to be. That's the belief.
That is the belief. But here's a fascinating thing about it, and I don't even know the full answer to this. So I had the opportunity to face that fear, the fear of the loss, the fear of non-existence, the experience what it would be like to descend into what it would be like to experience that loss as great as I could, either for myself or others, and the scariness of that, like experience that, and that did create a falling. It created a decline as I suffered emotionally and faced that fear. And then it did kind of bottom out, and then I feel like I'm on an upward trajectory toward it, but I don't know if it's complete or not.
What did you put in the place of it? I mean, I think that's
nothing.
That's what human beings do. Well, you say nothing, but I don't know that that's possible.
Well,
this is why heaven has been created and purgatory and all the rest of the religious concepts have been created. Afterlife. They're a response to the fact that when someone experiences loss, right?
Yes.
There has to be an answer. There has to be something that allows you to come back from this descent. Yes. And to say, well, this will be okay. Without that thing that you're putting in that spot, I don't know that you can come back from it.
So that's where I completely disagree with you. So here's the paradox, Dave. Here's the paradox of this whole thing. Anything you place in that place becomes your God, right? Because right now, my God is the fear of existence.
That's what God is for people.
I understand, but listen. If I try to put something in that place, I'm just replacing one thing for another. The true ascent is putting nothing there. The nothingness becomes the nothing everything, the everything nothing. It's a paradox.
But wouldn't that be the God then?
Nothing. Yes.
Yeah, would nothing be the God in that scenario?
Yes, but what I'm saying is
an abstract concept about the everything nothing would become the God.
It's not even but I'm saying we're trying to contextualize nothing like it's something, which I guess nothing can be something. So it's just going to get really bizarre in having this conversation right now. But the point was, I didn't try to stop myself by telling myself there's an afterlife or thinking that there's going to be a heaven or that someone's going to save me or replacing it with even a concept of anything. I didn't, because to me, that was just going to give myself pacifying the fear and not really feeling the fear of loss of existence. So I had to put nothing there. I had to just feel, what if this is it? What if this is it? What if there is no afterlife, right?
Okay, and then?
And then eventually the descent flattened out.
What do you mean by that? Like specifically, what do you mean by it flattened out?
There was no longer a burning fear to replace it with
Oh, an
something.
emotion switched. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I guess an emotion switched. Like I faced the emotional terror.
So there's a bottom to emotions, then is what you're saying.
Yes.
There's a bottom.
Yes.
Because people don't feel like there's a bottom. It feels like a open pit
I
that
know.
goes forever.
And that's what it felt
Just
like
like
when I
where
was in
Satan
it.
will burn in the pit that burns forever. That's what it is. That's the representation of it.
That's what it felt like. It felt like I'd be just falling forever, and there was no end. I couldn't see on the other side of it.
Sure, because that's the definition of abyss.
But in the abyss, it's like the yin yang. In the abyss, it switches to the other side. It's like infinity. It's the eight that's curled on its side. At some point, it flips back around. At some point, it came back to the everything.
Mm. That's amazing. I just want to say for the record, because there's so many people who don't come back from that. That even all these people that I say I respect, all these, modern social scientists like Jung and Nietzsche and all these philosophers, they all have gone crazy. That's what that is. They go into something and they fall so deep. And this is what Carl Jung said. Basically, you could go so deep, you could be in their years like he was. You go so deep into the quote shadow, you know what I mean? Where everything is chaos and there's nothing there. You don't have any structure, no systems to help you. You may not come out. There's so many people who don't come out. Nietzsche didn't come out. Nietzsche went crazy. He was probably only like 30 years old. He had an IQ of 250. He came up with all these theories. But he couldn't get out of his own abyss. So I don't know that it's...
I have a theory of it. You don't know what? If it's possible?
Well, I'm not saying it's not possible. Obviously, intellect isn't the thing that's going to get you out of it, because these guys, not only do they have intellect, but they had awareness as well. So there's obviously something else that's missing.
I feel like the key of that missing thing is emotion, emotional integrity, like feeling the feeling. So one thing to intellectualize something, and that's going to just make you crazy because you're just going to intellectualize it. At some point, it has to drop from the head into the heart. And what I mean by that is you have to feel it. It's one thing to just talk about concepts of the descent. It's another thing to feel the descent. I feel like the key for it is the feeling. It's the feeling that bottoms out. The intellect will never bottom out because it's infinite, right? But the feeling at some point is what the pursuit of love is. We talk about the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of love as the two core things. The truth is the intellect. The love is the feeling, the emotion, right? And so when you can drop from the truth and the intellect into the heart, the feeling, the emotion, and allow the truth of that, be honest about feeling things, I feel like that's the path, one of the pathways out. Like most people don't want to feel because it's scary to feel. That's a part what the descent is. So they're trying to intellectualize the descent, but they don't want to feel anything. Like I had to feel terror. It's scary to feel terror. And I mean, I don't do it every day, but I decided to do it.
I hear what you're saying, and I will think about it, but that's a little much. If that's the answer, I'm okay with saying that you have to be the fool before the savior. I'm okay with saying you descend and then you will ascend. I'm not okay saying go into the terror of the abyss until hopefully for you it flattens out.
Yes.
I'm not okay giving that advice. So I would have to.
I understand, and I didn't do it alone. So I went and got a whole support around going into the terror of the abyss. And I basically scratched the surface of the terror of the abyss. I know there's more terror of the abyss that's there because I barely saw it, and I was shaking. I was terrified. I was, and then I saw it and I was like, whoa, look at that, And so I tried to stay in it as long as I could. And then I did feel sort of the layers of things kind of shut off. But is there more? Yeah, there's more.
I see.